That's what Bicycling Magazine, among others, called it. But you don't have to be a rider of Tour de France caliber to do it, even though it has been compared to the hardest stages of the Tour. With 13,500 feet of climbing in its 155 miles, most of it in the first half alone. It can be done by mere mortals if you prepare yourself correctly. I should know. I am one such mortal, a touring cyclist that has successfully done this ride for 9 consecutive years. Part of the reason I rode it was the challenge, of course, but not to see how fast I could do it. I was in it for the beauty of the ride. Finishing it as fast as I could would defeat the entire purpose. As such, this video is going to be somewhat different from the usual ones made about this ride, as it won't be about how to break any records or be the first one to finish. Along with displaying its scenic beauty, this slideshow also explains how I, a mere mortal on a 1980s steel Schwinn touring bike, accomplished it, and how you can too, assuming you have trained for it. So if you're still with me, let's begin. The ride officially starts at 5:30, but there is a sign-in first and a few light snacks at the start just in case you skip breakfast. At first light, a police escort leads the pack out of town. The first few miles are flat and the pace is fast. I'd stay in the middle and let them carry me along. Soon, the route turns its way onto Watts Valley Road and the flat road becomes rolling hills. Most of the pack races on and leaves me behind. Don't be tempted to follow. I just let them go and assume my own pace, as I know what's coming. A few miles on, the route makes a right. They denote this as the start of Wildcat Hill, but that is deceptive. After a couple hills, it flattens out and rides through a serene valley along a bubbling creek. Then, crossing over a small bridge, the serenity ends, and riders are suddenly confronted with a mile-long 10% grade. This is where I would start passing some of those who left me behind earlier. At the top lies the first rest stop. Grab some snacks and top off your bottles. I carry 2 large ones and try to empty both before reaching the next stop. You can dehydrate easily on this ride. The downhill from Wildcat Rest Stop is a good one, but be careful. It is winding and narrow and there are a few cars. Not many, but it only takes one. Watts Valley climbs again and merges into Burro Valley Road. This begins Burro Climb, which at only 6%, 7% maximum, is not that steep by Kaiser standards. By the way, in order to qualify as the maximum gradient, it must last for a continuous half mile. Soon we enter Burro Valley proper. See those cliffs off to the right? Guess what? That's our next climb. But first, a wild downhill takes us to Tollhouse Road, which climbs briefly into the town of Tollhouse. Within the town of Tollhouse lies the next rest stop. I used to bake up a large batch of Tollhouse cookies for this stop, which earned me the nickname Tollhouse Cookie Man. What, you thought I was joking? Tollhouse grade starts almost immediately after leaving the rest stop, about 8 miles in length with an average gradient of 7% and a maximum of 14% in a series of 5 180-degree switchbacks. At the 4th, it starts to get really steep, and after the 5th, we start one of those 14% stretches. This lunge takes us to the top of the ridge, which mellows out a bit until Mountain Rest Fire Station. Here sits one of the designated water stops. Immediately following Mountain Rest is the steepest part of this climb, which in parts is actually more than 14%. The scrub pine gives way to taller trees as it climbs to the intersection of Highway 168, where it turns right, but the climbing isn't over. A little further on is Pine Ridge, about 5,000 feet elevation. A wide sweeping turn, and we're instantly surrounded by tall pines, firs, and cedars. Welcome to the Sierras. The road continues to climb at an average grade of 6 to 7%. This is Shaver Lake grade. The scenery is spectacular up here, but be careful, the traffic can be heavy. Soon we reach the top and the third rest stop at the Church of Christ in the town of Shaver Lake. It's a hard to see left, so members of the Kaiser crew will be there to flag you down. The ride rolls through town for a while, then drops in a long downhill to Shaver Lake. After a short flat section, it drops again to the base of the dam, then swings back up to lake level. The next turn will be Huntington Lake Road, and immediately you'll be confronted with another hill. However, this one, although steep, about 9%, isn't too long, about a mile or so. See that perfect pine tree sitting off by itself, silhouetted against the sky? That's the summit of this little rise. The downhill at the end of this climb is a fast one, but if you haven't driven the course the day before, watch your speed. It's twisty and there could very well be sand in the turns. There have been a few riders that have gone down here. It goes down for a while, then climbs again before finally dropping down and around the powerhouse and into the tiny town of Big Creek. Elevation 4,955 feet. At the end of this quaint little cliffside town is the Big Creek Rest Stop. This is the smallest of Kaiser's rest stops. The reason for its simplicity is no one wants to bog themselves down here. See that hill off to the right? That's the infamous Big Creek grade. Big Creek starts off at its average gradient of nearly 10%. Soon it flattens out a little, but just as you start to think, that wasn't so bad, it starts climbing again, at rarely less than 10%. The road makes a sharp 180-degree turn to the right and climbs even steeper. A 180-degree left turn and it becomes a 16% grade. I used to love passing the riders who left me in their dust earlier and are now walking, pushing their featherweight wonder bikes up this hill. Of course I would wave nicely at them as I casually pedaled by on my steel frame Schwinn. Another 180-degree left turn, then a right, and just as you begin to wonder if this hill will ever end, it quite suddenly does. And before us lies a picture postcard of the High Sierras. Deep blue sky, crystal blue lake, tall pines, people fishing, sailboats. It's almost enough to make you forget the climb. Well, almost. The road winds around Huntington Lake through dense forest for a while, but it doesn't follow the shoreline forever, so there are a few hills on the way. The lunch stop is by this lake where we hand our machine over to one of the Kaiser crew and go get some. They stop the clock for riders during lunch, so there's no reason to rush through it. I like to stay for about 20 to 30 minutes, which is long enough for me to recover from Big Creek and fill up for the last climb to the top. Tell one of the valets which bike is yours, tip him or her with a warm thanks, and continue on. In a couple of miles we turn onto Kaiser Pass Road. This climb comes in two parts. The first part was originally planned to go all the way over the Sierras to the Mammoth Lakes region. Thankfully, 2 wilderness areas put a stop to that. Imagine what the traffic would be like if it hadn't. This part makes for a great downhill on the way back. You'll see what it used to be like later on. Since we're coming back down this thing, make note of the road conditions on the way up. The easy half of this climb is still about a 7% grade. There are some great views though. Eventually the road flattens out, actually going slightly downhill for a while. Then it dead ends into the face of the mountain. This is where the highway department's plans came to their bitter end. To get to Kaiser Pass, we have to continue on the original road. That's it, the really steep narrow one climbing off to the right. The one that looks like someone poured asphalt over a fire road? Well, that's probably not too far from the truth. It was originally built in the early 1900s for the construction of Florence and Edison lakes, but the ride doesn't go that far. Average gradient of Kaiser Pass Road is just about the same as Big Creek grade. However, since the first half isn't as steep, the second half is relentless. The trees will thin out a bit and get gnarly looking as you approach the top. Congratulations! In 75 miles we've passed through 5 climate zones, equal to a trip from San Diego to Canada. People will be cheering us on for the last part of this climb. Stay here for a while too. I usually don't leave until at least 1:30, 2 o'clock. That way, by the time I reach Shaver Lake, most of the traffic will be gone. Who wants to do a great downhill like that stuck behind a Yucca Bago? With 11,500 feet of total climbing behind you, there's only 2,000 feet of up left to go. The rest is downhill. Before you leave Kaiser Pass Rest Stop, if you didn't bring a windbreaker with you, ask one of the crew for some newspaper and stuff a couple crumpled sheets under the front of your jersey. Believe it or not, it gets quite cold coming down this hill. I've seen snow on this ride. I don't have to tell you to be careful going back down the top half, do I? You should have figured that one out coming up. As soon as you reach the top end of 168, we let our brakes cool on that flat section. Don't take the windbreaker or newspaper off quite yet though, as one of the best downhills on the ride is coming up. Highways are built for fast travel, and the bottom half of Kaiser Pass Road is a great example. You probably don't even need your brakes for this one. In fact, if you're the adventurous type, you can tuck down for most of it and really fly. My fastest on this stretch is 50 miles an hour. Turn left at the T intersection at the bottom. This begins the last of the named hills on the climb to Kaiser, Tamarack Ridge. Actually, Tamarack Ridge is 4 hills, each climbing over its own mini ridge at an average gradient of 6 to 7%. Enjoy the clean air and scenery while climbing. Like most highways, the road itself is not exciting. Incidentally, those tall straight trees are called, surprise, tamarack pines. The last of the climbs culminates at the highest point of Tamarack Ridge at an elevation of 7,565 feet. From here on, it's an 8-mile downhill. No sharp turns and not real fast. Just relax and enjoy the free ride to Shaver Lake. The turnoff to Huntington Lake Road marks the bottom of Tamarack Ridge. The road flattens out at the lake just as it did going up, dips down to the bottom of the dam, then climbs up to Shaver Lake, the town. The road rolls up and down for a little bit, then makes one final climb to the Church of Christ. Rest stop number 3, remember? Well, now it's rest stop number 7. It's easier getting into from this side, too. This was the top of Shaver Lake grade on the way up, but it's a lot more fun in this direction, especially if you waited on Kaiser for the traffic to clear. However, those not great on hills might want to watch their speed on some of the curves. The turn into Auberry Road is where Tollhouse grade meets Highway 168. There is a short rise at the very beginning, but there are rarely any cars on it, and the hill can be clearly seen on the approach. So don't be afraid to use some of the momentum you've built up. Auberry Road is a rolling downhill, meaning it goes down with some very short ups scattered along the way. Eventually, though, there aren't any more ups. Soon, the pine forest gets left behind too. The last part of this downhill consists of 6 switchbacks, and somewhere between the third and fourth one, riders encounter a phenomenon known as an inversion layer. Up till now, the temperature has ranged from about 60 to 80 degrees tops. Within 2 wheel turns, it'll be 105 degrees. Count on it, proclaimed the ride flyer. Seriously, it's like running into a wall, or an oven. Just 30 miles to go. A flat section, more down, and a sweeping curve brings us to the town of Auberry. The Kaiser crew sets up a water stop here. From Auberry, the road roughly follows the route once taken by the old San Joaquin and Eastern Railroad through the foothills and the heat, until finally it reaches Millerton's store. Rest stop number 8. Because of the heat, Millerton not only has soft drinks on ice, they also have moist towels and a kiddie pool filled with ice water so you can cool your brow and put your tired feet on ice too. Only 15 miles remains between Millerton and Clovis. It's still a rolling downhill for a while, but soon ends with a short climb out of the wash, which is all that remains of the canyon, and once again we are on the flat valley floor. Look for the water tower which stands over Lenman Park. When you see it, you know you're home free. Enjoy the celebratory dinner, and don't forget your commemorative patch, pin, t-shirt, or whatever it is they're giving away now. The climb to Kaiser remains to this day the best annual ride I have done in all my nearly half-century of bicycle riding, and that includes both coasts. Challenge and spectacular scenery aside, it has the best planned route, is the best organized and run, with unparalleled rider support. I can only hope these remain true today. There have been a few changes since I used to do this ride back in the 90s. The start location has changed, and the lunch stop, while still at Huntington Lake, is no longer at one of the campsites on the shore of the lake. It is now stationed in the town of Lakeshore. Also in my day, the climb up Big Creek grade was heavily forested and shady the whole way. Today, fires and loggers have removed almost all the trees, and it has become a hot, barren hell of a climb. Lastly, although there have been no significant changes to the route, the 13,500 feet of total climbing I used to do has somehow become 15,000 feet. Where this extra 1,500 feet of climbing came from, I have no idea. Perhaps someone could tell me in the comments section.